Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. We're going to cover everything. We're going to cut through all the propaganda, give it to you straight from left, right, and center. The opinions are what counts.
Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and we're broadcasting today from Venice, Florida, from the great state of Virginia, and from Chicago, Illinois. Dave, Brat, Tom Amenta, welcome back to the show. Happy to have both of you with me today.
Hey, thanks, Mark.
Hey, Dave, let me start with you because I know you're on a little bit of a tight schedule here. Okay,
Sure.
You saw the news of the week about Brazil, Russia, India, China. Help our viewers and listeners out, Dave, because this is not good news for the United States, short-term, intermediate, or long-term.
Yeah, no, that's right. And so the good news is all of those economies are managed worse than us, right? So we still have some semblance of a free market economy. But our Federal Reserve has been out of control for about 30 years now, right? Printing money left and right, $9 trillion on the Federal Reserve balance sheet. So that got us both inflation, very high inflation, and higher interest rates. And so the problem there is once you get inflation, prices have never come down. So the damage has been done, right? Prices, we've lost, 20% of our purchasing power. Larry Summers, Democrat Secretary Treasury, President of Harvard, says inflation for automobiles and home prices were double the 9% back at the peak, 18%. Food prices are 20 to 30%, right? So the American people know prices have gone up like a ratchet, right? When you jack your car up, they've never come down. And so the rest of the world is very rational, right? The Chinese and everybody have a lot of real smart PhD economists. And it doesn't take much math to figure out that you don't want to invest in America when you lose 20% of your purchasing power. So they're looking for alternatives. The good news is it's like OPEC. It sounds good in theory, but it's hard for all of them to agree, right? So it's not a done deal yet. But the threat is, and we're losing friends around the world. We were, 4 years ago, we were in no wars. Now we're in 4 wars. And some of them are potentially getting hot. And so for some reason, the U.S. is doing everything wrong. We're losing our friends for multiple reasons. And so people are making alternative bets. And the one thing that can really go wrong is if those foreign countries learn how to somehow tie their currency to gold, which means it's real money, and then they tie it to blockchain. And that's the biggie for them, right? No one in their right mind is going to invest in China, right? You'd have to be nuts. But if you invest in a currency of China tied to gold and blockchain, so you're going to get your money back, right? So that it is 100% secure, that might change your mind. And so we'll see. But the other major news I'm sure you'll get to was the deficit numbers coming out from CBO. And that just puts more pressure in the wrong direction on all the numbers we just got done talking about.
Well, let's talk about that CBO projection. And Tom, the number came out. It's right now $1.9 trillion. We have now hit the $35 trillion mark. And as Dave and I have talked many times, Tom, you and I both, this projection by 2034, it's scheduled to hit, $55 trillion by 2034? Tom, that's an unsustainable path.
I want to go back really quickly with Dave said, because I thought something was really interesting. As he mentioned OPEC, and as the centrist, less sort of hawkish on some of the economic foreign policy. I mean, look, we still have all of the West. We're talking about developing economies. And really what I read from the India-Russian ties is that now they're importing $2.1 million barrels more of Russian oil, which is going to keep Russia afloat. Definitely not good news for us, certainly not in the Ukraine. But I think that this is a very clear to that sort of facet of Dave's point. Is like, hey, they're going to go and look for the best deal. Right now, it isn't always in the U.S. We've never had a good oil policy, despite being the world's leading exporter now, thanks to fracking and shale like that. So I think it's one more demerit against the Biden administration's lack of reality when it comes to balancing climate policy with the economic realities. And Modi's making a good deal. I don't like it, but I can't really dislike him or hate him for it. It's just pragmatic. As far as the debt goes, I mean, look, Mark, as your resident centrist, right, who does believe the government should spend to a certain level and also is very, very pro small government, this is just one more example of me wanting to take the proverbial Democratic skull and the proverbial Republican skull and crack it together until some sort of common sense comes in. Because this is just basic. You can't spend more than you take in. Now, we can have an argument about what we should take in and who should be taking those. And we can have that until we're blue in the face. None of that is going to change the most simple, most basic thing that we got taught when we were 5 years old. That first time that our parents handed us a dollar bill to go to the store and buy whatever, like the Snickers bar or whatever. It's like you can walk in with that dollar. Back in the day, a Snickers bar for me was like 50 cents. But you weren't getting more than one Snickers bar with that because of the 7 cents taxes, right? It blows my mind that I've got to look at the left and the right and just sitting here in the middle being like, y'all, really? Like, we're still doing this? We're still having this conversation? We're still... I'm sorry, we learned this when we were 5 years old, ladies and gentlemen. It ain't changed. Like, the conversation... like. That I really do. I want to like sit down. I want to almost bring in like a 8-year-old, right? Just a little older and like do the like, are you smarter than a 5th grader thing? And like have the 5th grader or that 8-year-old lecture all these supposedly smart people on just the most basic tenets of economic policy. And then maybe we'll hit the reset button or something. It's just, we've gone past absurd. That trillion number puts us so far behind, puts us at such a disadvantage on the world, stage financially. And going back to, and again, Dave's point earlier that the developing world is no longer wanting to do business with us for a myriad of reasons, but this has definitely got to be one of them. And it's just like, again, I don't know how to put it.
Let me ask you
learned this when we were 5 years old.
Let me ask you this, Dave, putting it back in your court, you served in that great institution, Congress. You have a lot of friends there. I mean, we're heading into election now. Biden is he's tapped the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to keep oil prices down. We're running $1.9 trillion deficit. It's being added to by even though the Supreme Court said no, a bunch of student debt is still being forgiven. That's more red ink on top of it. And I'm seeing nothing from anybody saying, as Tom was saying, we need to live within our means. Dave, what's it going to take to at least get it moving in the right direction?
Yeah, no. Well, what it will take is the American people to start throwing the bums out, right? So, I was a Presbyterian economist. That's fairly boring. I was no right winger. I believe in a balanced budget, just like Tom just got done saying. But unfortunately, if you go up to D.C. and you say, "I want to balance the budget," they'll laugh you out of town. You'll be a right wing knuckle drag, every name in the book. And so it's not a matter of education. They all know all this. They know the implications. We're running against Santa Claus on the left, right? The Pelosi budget was through the roof, $7 trillion. When I was in Congress, it was $4.5 trillion or $5 trillion. Then we had COVID. No one in their right mind thought you'd go back. Everyone thought we would go back to sanity, to a $5 trillion budget where we were just running, $1 trillion deficits. No, we kept it at $7 trillion. And so why did that happen? Because Kevin McCarthy and the new speaker, well, first of all, McCarthy went up because of the donor class. They own D.C. It's not a matter of mathematics at all. It's who owns the cartel. So McCarthy went up and gave Pelosi the Pelosi budget for $7 trillion. And it funded the DOJ, the CIA, the FBI, the Russiagate folks. All this is not conspiracy anymore. It's all fact. It's all proven. The 51 intelligence officers. I could go on and on and on. And we just fully funded the groups who are whacking this country. And we got a border invasion. We fully funded that. We gave them more money to make the border invasion more efficient. We have 4 wars going on, right? The Red Sea, Israel, China. I can't keep track of them all. These are trillions and trillions of dollars. When you look, under, and I left off the main one, the main source of, Ukraine. When that story gets finally told, you'll notice anyone who gets too near it ends up kind of dead or something. That's because they're laundering so many billions through there, right? They got China Wuhan labs over there. They got fraudulent banking schemes going over there. You got links to the highest levels of government here. All of this is well known now. There's checks, right? There's cleared checks. And so, what can we do about it? The American people better get their head on straight because you just said we have 57 trillion debt in 10 years, according to CBO. CBO was off by 27% on this one. They're wrong every time. And then the big five, the magnificent seven, the big five firms were reported yesterday have cleared 64% of all the stock market gains from the S&P 500. Five firms, all of it, right? So the wealthy, where'd the liberals go on us, right? They used to stick up for the middle guy. The top 10% own 90% now of the stocks and bonds and pension funds. The top 10% own, to repeat, 90%. Stock market's going through the roof. And the biggest institutional investors for all five of those firms are BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard. And everybody goes, well, whoop-de-doo, who cares? They're just index funds. No, they're index funds that own the stocks and are voting your proxy. And what's his name? Fink, the head of BlackRock, the $10 trillion man, is interested in this ESG thing, right? So this all sounds nice. It sounds centrist, for the environment and good governance and doing social good deeds. Well, then, Larry, if you're gonna let's pick the environment. E. Let's start with the letter E. Why would you plow half of your investments into China? Because they're really well known for their clean environment and they're great on social good deeds, right? Totalitarian regimes are known for this, and they got a great corporate governance structure over there. Right. So, I mean, the American people are putting all their money into these Vanguard, State Street, BlackRock. They don't know what they're doing because you're not allowed to say anything.
There's a deeper level to this that we've got to get to. It's not the American people that are doing it. OK, it's that these
yes, they are. Corporations that they can reverse it tomorrow.
I work in tech. I work in corporate America, and I don't have a
people don't invest in
Vanguard fund. If I want,
don't invest
here's
in
the
it.
truth. No. Okay. So you mean to tell me that I'm going to take 50% of what I can get in my 401k and just flush it down the toilet because I don't want to use the Vanguard fund? You mean to tell me that the everyday American, and look, I am way
There's
better
other
off.
Funds. There's a bunch of good Christian funds.
Not only
there's a bunch of good Christian funds. Yeah. Okay. And you just shove it in another fund.
I think the point, Tom,
that's not realistic. Come on. Like for real, you're going to tell me that someone is going to flush 50 and in some cases 100% match on their fund away in the name of not using a BlackRock or a Vanguard. I'm with you that they're a problem. Okay, let's establish a baseline here since we're just getting to know each other in real time. Okay, I'm with you. There needs to be a level of, dare I say it, governance and government regulation. I know that's not always the most popular thing on the right. For some of this, I'm here, I will say that they are very pick and choosy about how they like to do. I work in marketing and public relations. Okay, I am very aware of just like how powerful all of that is. Okay, I'm good at what I do.
Yep. Huge. Yep.
All right, but at the same time, to make this inference that it's them, right? This goes back to kind of what we were saying earlier. At the end of the day, it's the people. It is completely unreasonable of middle America, small time America, or even upper middle class America to give away that essentially free money to us. I know we're paying for it in other ways, but just work with me here the way the average person sees it in their 401k. Look, again, I'm doing well. I'm still not giving up, 5 figures every single year to my retirement, because that's a perk for me living in this company to dump it into okay, so I put $7,000 into my Roth, I max my contribution, I do that off my bonus, and then what? It's the structure that America is at right now and how we do some of these things. And I know we're getting way in the weeds and probably lost a bunch of people, but at the end of the day, dude, come on. There's multi-layers to this. It is not simply.
Yeah, you're right. But this is the issue. The key word you used is structure. We have set these structures in place over the past 20 or 30 years, premised on this idea that we have free markets or something like this. And now it's a lie, right? It turns out the Madisonians have been naive and gullible. And I'm one of them. I went to Princeton Seminary, the home of James Madison. and then did a PhD in economics. Another Adam Smith, a nice Scottish Presbyterian guy, right? We're all gullible. Now the 3-letter agencies run this country. And so the moderate types want to say, well, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. What are you going to do? Have a revolution and turn over these structures? Yes, I suggest we do turn over the structural problems are what are embedded in the American people. You're right. They don't have any options because we've allowed this to happen. In order to have free markets, a supply curve in Econ 101, it means you got a bunch of firms on the supply curve. All the Magnificent Seven are monopolies. And so the structure, according to U.S. law, is they cannot exist. So, like, I'm not some radical winger. I'm just saying it'd be nice if we followed the Constitution and the original American setup that produced a middle class. And I got to go in about a minute, but I want to show people how we got here on the structures. Everybody read this book, Return of the Strong Gods by R.R. Reno. That will explain to you very well what's going on. And then the second one is National Security and the Double Government by Glennon. And he explains the evolution from the Madisonians, right? The separation of powers, folks. We do not have a separation of power right now. The President of the United States run everything, right? That's why this presidential contest is existential to everybody, because that president holds all power. The courts have deferred their power. The Congress doesn't do anything anymore. I was there for 4 years. It's all in the hands of that. And the 3-letter agencies set in place by Truman. Truman was a good guy, like him. But the 3-letter agencies now run the world.
Hold on, Tom. He's
and
got
that's
1 minute.
the structure
Tom,
we're living under.
Right. Dave, I know you got to go right now, but and Tom, I'm going to give you time to respond to that. But Dave, thanks for joining me today. I know it was a short notice. We've had a few timing issues.
I love Tom's good. I like Tom.
I'm going to have you.
Dave, we'll get back
Dave,
on for
when
an
you have
hour.
more time, I'm going to have you back so we can finish this discussion, because this is going to be a lively one. I can see that going forward. But Dave Brat, thank you for joining me today, as always. All right,
you
Tom,
bet, brother. Good.
Okay, good seeing you, buddy.
You guys have fun.
All right, Tom, I'm going to give you the floor right now because Dave literally had a hard cut there.
Yeah, no. I understand. This is one of those things, and he's one of the very few people that I want to be as fair as can, because he actually worked inside the apparatus. I hear that whole the alphabet soup agencies, and I'm just like, oh, here we go again. Okay. Thankfully, he has a little understanding and a little more nuance. So I want to put it like this. They don't run the world. They don't run the government. And again, I'm a former special operations guy. I have friends that I have been friends with for 20, 25 years that work in those agencies that at this point are now senior people in those agencies. Okay. We keep up everything. What the misperception has been misaligned is that it kind of goes back to exactly what you were saying earlier, at least in my opinion, about how much overpowered the executive branch has gotten, which, by the way, I'm going to go back to my favorite centrist thing. You mean to tell me we're going to give power the executive branch to one of 2 people that 70% of us hate? That's been a great idea. Good job, Republican and Democratic Party. It just doesn't work. And I know we got to go to break, so I'll bite my tongue and we'll continue it after the break.
Right. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we are going to tackle that issue. Be back in 90 seconds, folks.
Sounds rolling. All 3 cameras. We're good. Aiming speed.
Is there any regrets that you have in life? I should sit here and say, I got a lot of regrets. But when I look back on my life and I understand the lives that were lost, I'm sitting here with you. And I can tell my story.
Former National Security Advisor Lieutenant General Michael Flynn pleaded guilty today to lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
He was, by definition, the most dangerous possible person for Donald Trump to hire.
Really brilliant military career, serving 33 years. Why was he being so elusive?
Mike Flynn told the truth and faced life in prison.
Every American needs this historical DVD keepsake. Flynn delivered the truth, whatever the cost. Hand signed by General Michael Flynn, one of America's most treasured military heroes. Order now at the Patriot TV store. Go to Patriot TV, click on Store, and grab a once-in-a-lifetime chance to own a treasured piece of American history. And get your own personal download link to watch America's most talked-about movie, as well as a DVD hand-signed by General Michael Flynn. Use promo code PTV at checkout to get special savings. The Patriot TV store. Incredible savings and a secure, hassle-free shopping experience.
And we're back. All right, Tom. Listen, I've seen that General Flynn movie 3 times. Folks, go out and get the DVD. It is an exceptional moving experience. Tom, let me finish. Let me allow you finish making your point here.
No, all good. So look, what drives me nuts is this concept. First of all, this concept of a cabal, right? Okay, if there's a cabal, then Congress is implicated because of the Intelligence Committee, plus the committee that on judiciary that governs the FBI. The Intelligence Committee goes back to the NSA, the DIA. Like, by the time with defense and armed services, by the time you get back to this notion that there's somehow not oversight on these institutions is to say that everybody is involved. Now, especially because Dave has been a part of this, and I know part of the things that what he would have said is there is a very real bureaucracy that's in all of these institutions. The amount of times that my friends and I have had a drink or a beer, and they've been like, my boss, who's been here for 25 years, and exerting some frustration and having those conversations and chuckling or even be upset about it have happened for 10, 15 years at this point, depending on when the thing that I would encourage the viewer and everything to think about is there's no difference in that frustration, that latent sort of institutional inertia than the corporation that you work in if you work in corporate America like I do. I work in tech, which is supposed to be the fast growing, evolving. And the amount of times that I've heard, especially in the past 2 weeks, I've been working on a very large project. Oh, well, that's the way we've always done it. It's obtuse. Government is in no way, shape, or form better. If anything, it's worse because you can be there for a longer time and, you can accumulate more of this sort of political capital inside and contribute more to that inertia. It's a problem. Yes. It's not a conspiracy. It's human nature. It's if you can be middle management and you're not going anywhere else, but you've got the government security of a government job that they can't fire you from, and a government pension if you get to 30 years, that's 80% compared to the 60% if you get to 25. Well, what are you going to do? You've been there forever as a drone. You might as well punch the clock a little while longer. Again, problem, something that should be addressed, frankly, something that we as Americans should have the courage to say, are you the best for that job? Oh, you're not, then you should leave. 100%. But the other thing that so many people in the past 10 years that really blows my mind is try to say that somehow, whether they're Democrats or Republicans or some level of political whatever, they're all over those organizations. And most of the overwhelming majority of those people aren't political appointee. They're government servants. They walk in, they did it for some reason, whether it's a paycheck, whether it's because they want to do what they think is the right thing, whether they want to do whatever. And they go and serve in government, or even if they eventually want to get somewhere else, like they've got a myriad of reasons. But the most diverse place that you will ever see in America is the U.S. military from a political spectrum, right? Now, there are certain jobs that are going to favor certain places. But
I'll grant you that on the piece.
Government.
Yeah, but one thing I got to push back on here, okay? And you were sort of alluding to this point before you changed directions. You've got two people right now who are neck and neck in the polls, Trump and Biden. Mm-hmm. Really, that both of them combined are the American public doesn't want either one of them to be president, but one of them is going to be the president, okay?
Yes.
And the people on the right side of the ledger feel the world's coming to an end if Biden is elected, and people on the left, they think it's going to be worse. Not only is the world coming to an end, but they're going to go to hell because of Trump. I mean, there is a sliver, 10% sort of in the middle there. Some of the people that voted for Trump now are on Biden's side. Some that voted for Biden are on Trump's side. And although Trump is leading in the swing state polls, we know that things can change. You've got a debate coming up this coming week on Wednesday in Atlanta. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? You got a sentencing coming up, and then you've got the two conventions coming up after that. So where I see, Tom, one of these two men, unless something really bizarre happens, when we've talked about that, it could, but the likelihood is one of these two men will be inaugurated in January. So whether we like it or not, that is where we are right now. Now, that's it.
Mark, I wholeheartedly agree. My only point is that this notion that the institution of an alphabet agency is somehow in this secret cabal running things, that's all I was trying to push back, was saying is that there's a difference between inertia. But to your point where you're going with this, and I agree, when you layer on that you're now going to have someone that the majority of Americans is going to see as deeply problematic in the office, whichever side you go, that's the side's irrelevant at this point. And suddenly you see that inertia, and then you see those opportunists inside of it, which exist in any structure, any organization. You have an opportunist that are now going to curry favor for one side or the other, and it's only going to exasperate this problem. I'm totally here for that. I totally agree with all that. That's just not a conspiracy. That's just human nature at work. And I think that the more we can look at things through that lens and not thinking that one side is trying to like stab the other side in the back in the middle of the night, it's not that. It's just humans being human. And I think that the more we can look at it through that lens, maybe we can start solving some of these problems in a more constructive way, rather than, listening to what we're seeing from the absolute far right and the absolute far left. That, I've been on the show many times. Those are the things that drive me nuts.
But let me push back a little bit on that. You even have people in the Democratic Party right now trying to bring Joe Biden more towards the center left. Now, you may disagree with me on this, but damn good and well, this administration is way left. I mean, way left of where Barack Obama was when he was president. I mean, literally, Tom, the Joe Biden administration makes Barack Obama look like a centrist. Honest to God, it does. And these people that are on these White House staff jobs who are really calling the shots, you cannot tell me that a cognitively degenerating Joe Biden is calling the shots in his own White House. I simply don't believe it. And I know damn near a lot of Democrats don't believe it either. But the fact of the matter is, whether it's his chief of staff, whether it's Susan Rice, whether I could name a litany of people that work in the White House, some are household names, some are not, that are literally giving direction. And as Dave Brat correctly pointed out, the presidency is becoming more powerful, not less powerful. Okay?
Yeah. So here's my problem, though, Mark. And look, this came out this week. The author that just wrote the book, ostensibly he was writing, and I've listened to 5 or 6 podcasts. I can't get enough of the story because I'm fascinated by it. He wrote it because Trump wanted to talk about The Apprentice, right? He had 6 interviews with Donald Trump over the course of a year, okay? He's remarkably apolitical. One of my favorite places to get news at this point has become Tara Palmieri, who's the senior correspondent for politics at Puck. Her podcast, because it's called Somebody's Gotta Win. It's just a really snide, like, well, we're stuck with one of these jokers. It's been remarkably balanced. It's been remarkably centrist. And again, I'm from the center. I want to hear both sides as many times as I can. So he went on and he was talking about how Trump also has a real cognitive decline. Let me be clear before we go. Not as bad as Biden's. And this gentleman didn't outright say that, but he alluded to it. But he also very comprehensively, very fairly, in my opinion, laid out the case that Trump is 78 years old, right? And he is also suffering his own level of decline. And I take that as this guy's trying to sell a book about The Apprentice, okay? He's not trying to sell the book about like Trump's White House or anything like that. So even there, I don't want to hear about these drivers, oh, he's out to get Trump. He's not. And when I hear that from someone who doesn't have a dog in the fight, right? Who has just had a fascinating of like, what did The Apprentice do to shape Donald Trump and his public perception? Gets access, goes out and does it, plays by the rules that even the Trump administration, and his people were like, yeah, they brought him back 6 times to interview him. Okay, like, come on. They're both in cognitive decline. Now, one can be 60% decline and the other can be 35. It doesn't change the fact that this is once again why I'm talking about why I can't stand both of these guys. And once again, why we need to have a really, really hard look at ourselves in this country. Because you're right, it's not a left or right thing anymore. It's, but you can choose to trust the people behind Trump more than the far right people that you trust behind Biden. And that's a fair conversation. It's different than what we're having, but the conversation of who's actually in control is now a valid, reasonable conversation to have based on the exact same issue, cognitive decline, for both of them. The information is out on both of them. And I don't want to hear the shade of gray. One's worse than the other. It's happening for both. And we've got to start looking at it like that.
I'm not buying what you're selling, Tom. I've seen Joe Biden in action, and I've seen Donald Trump. I've been to his place multiple times, seen him, looked him in the eye, talked to him. I'm going to trust my own eyes and my own mouth versus what some journalist who interviewed him 6 times says. And does he miss a name every now and then? Yeah, but I've seen Donald Trump get up on the stump. I've seen him deliver speeches at Mar-a-Lago. I've seen him come in, no notes, no nothing, and could talk about subjects, for literally an hour on end. And what I'm saying to you is, I can say that having met the man, having talked to him on multiple occasions, I haven't seen, quote, a 35% evidence of decline. I think that's way exaggerated.
But with Biden,
but hold on, let me finish. Let me finish now.
Okay.
No, let me finish. Hold on. You're quoting Jennifer Palmieri. She's a leftist. Okay, don't tell me she's a centrist. She's a Democrat, and she's been a leftist her whole life. So I'm not buying that either. So now, whoever your podcast, if that's the podcast you're talking about, she is constantly advocating for democratic principles. Joe Biden, Barack Obama, etc. My point is this: we're going to see a debate, coming up. And if I'm Donald Trump, you know what I do in that debate? I'm going to say, hey, wait a second, folks. Are you aware that if Joe Biden is reelected, that the Trump tax cuts are going to expire at the end of 2025? People are going to say, no, what do you mean the Trump tax cuts are going to expire? Oh, yeah, Donald Trump. I helped pass the largest tax cut in history, which helped stimulate economic growth. Now, liberals will say, oh, no, it went to the billionaires and the millionaires and the upper class. But the fact of the matter is, Tom, 60% of Americans will pay higher taxes if Joe Biden wins this election, just by the fact that Biden has unequivocally said those Trump tax cuts in no way, shape, or form are going to be extended under a second Biden administration. Now, even if Trump wins, there's no guarantee they could get extended because that's going to take an act of Congress. And based upon where the polling is right now, I don't think there's going to be 60 Democrats or 60 Republicans in the Senate. It's going to be +1, +2 either way. And who knows which way the House is going to go. So there's no guarantee that if Trump wins. But again, if I'm Trump, I'm sitting here pounding that message. And Tom, again, I know I'm a fan, but when the reason he's up in some of these swing states and the reason he's getting some of the shift in voters moving his direction, a lot of people are saying, you know what? I'm looking back at Trump years, and a McDonald's hamburger didn't cost $5 back when Trump was president. I didn't have to spend X amount of dollars going to the grocery store. And Dave Brat is right. Groceries, depending upon where you are, up 20 to 30%. Yep. Real estate values have gone up. Mortgages are relatively high. How the hell a young person can ever buy a house beyond me? But I mean, you went through it. You bought a house recently. So, but my point is this:
my brother.
People are starting to look back. Yeah, I know you did. But people are starting to look back and they're saying, man, I think Trump's a jerk, but you know what? His policies, and I had more money in my pocket when he was president. And Tom, again, the reason I'm saying this is and again, polling's not the end all here. But one thing that has caught my attention, and I'm not happy about it, but in some of these Senate races and House races, the senators and congressmen who are Democrats are way outperforming Joe Biden, meaning their constituents, they like their local Democratic congressman or their senator, not recognizing that 99% of the time Democrats vote monolithically, but they don't like Joe Biden. So you tell me, Tom, Trump tax cuts, they are going to expire. Again, this leads to a longer economic discussion that we've had today. I mean, Biden's sitting here, again, getting rid of this student debt, adding to the budget deficit, no concept in place. And he just all he talks about is taxing billionaires. And based upon what they read.
Yeah, and it's
I threw a lot at you there. You can chew it.
No. So I want to back up to a couple of things because I think it's really important. One, the reason I like Tara Palmieri, I'm sure that she's left leaning, as are most conventional journalists. If you look at by percentage, most of them are. I'm not arguing that. The reason I like her and the reason that she has credibility, and you can fact check and go look this up. She was one of the few people at the beginning of the Biden administration that had the courage to do reporting that was anti-Biden. His administration and his press people flamed her, and she basically double burdened them, be like, no, I stand by my reporting. Like, you guys screwed the pooch on this one, and she's maintained that. Is she probably left leaning? I'm sure she is. But when I can see someone who consistently stands up for good reporting, regardless of what side it's on, I'm going to, especially in this increasingly fractured world, that's someone I'm going to pay attention to. Even if I don't always agree with them, I can at least respect that they will hold to their principles. And again, fact check me. She consistently has. Secondly, when it comes to the debates and it comes to how Biden presents and this idea of cognitive decline, one of the things that the right has been masterful of avoiding, and Biden's, in my opinion, people have shot themselves in the foot because he wants to seem so strong, is Biden has a very real, very problematic speech impediment. His ability to just speak in general has always been a problem for us. Why it took him since the 80s to finally get here where he's gotten good enough at public speaking to even be president. He's wanted to be there forever. Like, again, go fact check me. He has a very real problem with that, which again contributes to him looking like he's falling off. Again, I'm not arguing that he hasn't fallen off. He absolutely has, 100%. But when you start telling me about, oh, Trump can do it off the cuff, Biden has never, since Biden was 7 years old, been able to do it off the cuff. He just can't. He has a speech impediment. He has a cognitive learning disability, which is part of the reason that I'm sure that Jill likes him so much, because she's an educator. And she's like, oh, this is my Florence Nightingale moment or something like that. It's just always felt that way to me. So I think that if you're going to do it, you've got to square the books, and you got to level the playing field, and you got to look at all facets of it. Again, I am not saying that Trump is more declined. I'm saying that I've seen Trump decline with the things you said. He's forgetting names. He's forgetting dates. He's talking about the wrong thing at times. He gets back much faster than Biden does. I'm with you. I am not saying in any way, shape, or form he's worse. Please hear me, ladies and gentlemen. I am saying there is evidence that he is also starting to slide. Now, going all the way back to the economics that we're talking about, I don't really have a lot to disagree with you on. We're like kind of back at the level set. Yes, if I'm Trump, I just crack as hard as I can on, hey, this tax cut is going away. You don't want that, right? Hey, right. The economy was better under me than Biden. I think there's a little bit of fuzzy math. I think there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors. But at the presidential level, there's always smoke and mirrors to all of this. There's always, long-term macroeconomic policy doesn't get done in 4 years. You and I both know this. We both know how the market works. But at the same time, you capitalize on what you can, and it's gotten appreciably worse with inflation. Biden has made a series of missteps inflationary that we've talked about, frankly, at this point, ad nauseum, and we both agree on that. Now, for the down ballot stuff, this is where you and I have talked and been.
Let me do this, Tom. Let me do this. We're at a break time right now. We're going to break for 60, but when we come back, let's follow through on that, and we're going to talk from both their perspectives about something they could both do to help the American people.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most private assets, silver and gold.
Call Kirk Elliott, PhD at 877-547-5743. That's 877-KIRK-PhD.
Looking to give your wardrobe an upgrade? Well, look no further. Here at God Country & Kin, we've got you covered from head to toe, from shoulder to shoulder, and everything in between. Introducing our brand new Patriotic Collection, designed to display your patriotic spirit with a stylish look that's sure to turn heads. And the best part is, you don't have to break the bank to be your best you. Why wait? Visit us online or in-store today and elevate your style with God Country & Kin. God Country & Kin, where patriotism meets style. Shop now. Visit the Patriot TV store and look for the God Country Kin banner to find the perfect outfit, shirt, accessory, or maybe a great hat. You can totally see yourself rocking this hat. I know you can. And check out all the great stuff we've got to show your patriotism at patriot.tv.store. Click that link above that says store and join me there at the Patriot TV store.
Yeah, and we're back, folks. Listen, one thing about those gold prices, gold's hovering $2,400 an ounce. And if the stuff Dave Brat was talking about earlier, where gold becomes the standard with which some of these, again, some of our adversaries, some of our trading partners start leveraging, that $2,400 is going to be in the rearview mirror, and it's going to be well north of there. So pick up the phone, call Dr. Kirk Elliott. The man is a PhD economist, and he will guide you through all your gold investments and silver. People are buying so much silver now, they're having to increase the vaults. All right, Tom, I'm back with you. All right, let's talk about something. Trump has obviously something he can talk about in this debate coming up on Wednesday, which is his economic record. And, the economy is still growing right now, but the fact of the matter is, and this is where I think the crux of the matter is, economic total growth is actually a little bit higher right now under Biden than it was Trump. But the problem is 70% of the American people are not able to keep up with the inflation rate. And a lot of people expect, well, when are prices going to come down? They're not. Okay, most of these elevated prices, now again, housing prices move up and down, oil prices up and down. But when's the last time grocery prices moved? They generally don't go down. It's more of a function of supply demand. And a lot of people blame supply chains, when we came out of COVID. But the fact is, there was a boatload of money printed. It happened, whether Biden likes it or not. When he was president, we had the super high inflation, and he hasn't really provided a good answer to it, Tom. So when they're debating on Wednesday night, if you are guiding Joe Biden, and bear in mind, that's 70%, Americans are losing their purchasing power. They have not been able to keep up. They may have gotten 10, 12, 13% raises, but inflation's gone up 20% under Joe Biden. Heck, I even saw a thing the other day, Tom. American Airlines flight attendants turned down a 17% increase. And you know what happens? Starts getting into this, an endless cycle. Those inflation numbers will come. If you're talking about your economic record, how does he deal with it?
Yeah, so if I'm Biden, I lead with the social issues, right? I lead with abortion. Look, I understand that on the right, even on the moderate right, it is not pro-choice isn't popular. The fact is that there has been a tipping point in this country where the best number you're ever going to get is 55% of America's in favor of it. Okay, that is now an outside the margin of polling error majority. This isn't a like or dislike. This is just a simple statistical
you're
fact.
Right.
And you've even seen some very red states, Kansas, for example, that Roe versus Wade got dropped and they immediately put an abortion protection in place. That is not a normal, thing. So if I'm him,
Tom.
But if I'm him, I'm leading.
No, but what I'm saying to you is you're making
social.
You absolutely just made my point. I said, if you're advising Joe, I know what you're coaching him in the debate. I get that. And he's going to talk about, look, the issues that are important most to the American people are the economy, the border, and again, unfortunately, what crime, but what you said is, reproductive rights, that has crossed the threshold of agreement.
But here's the thing,
and that number may be in the upper 50s. I don't know, but basically what you just told me was, in response to an economic question, basically change the subject and talk about abortion.
Well, you asked me what I would do in a debate. Okay, this is what I do for a living. I do marketing. I do public relations.
Right.
And at the end of the day, a debate has absolutely zero, ladies and gentlemen, I assure you, zero to do with an issue. It has everything to do with how do you mobilize your base and how do you take the people that are undecided and put out the issues for them. Reproductive rights, and this has been shown very clearly in this country, for the suburban woman, okay, the middle-class suburban woman, this really, really matters. Like it, don't like it, that's irrelevant. It matters. So play to that strength. Okay, you mentioned something economic specifically. I am olaying, I am sidestepping inflation absolutely positively as much as I possibly can. And instead, I'm going to point to exactly what you said, economic growth. It's not about which one's better, which one's right. It's about, but the economy's growing under me. I'll probably throw a dash of, well, look at how bad COVID was under him. You're really going to try, you're saying he has this this economic thing, but really it's an incomplete because everything went wrong. Now, you and I, let's pause for a minute to get like a Tom, Mark level set. You and I both agree that that their economic stimulus was needed when Trump did it. It was completely unneeded the last time Biden did it, and that's part of the reason we have this inflation. That is an adult like minds and a level of intelligence coming out with that. Okay, but with all of that, if I'm Biden, I'm not touching any of that. That's a third rail. That's going to electrocute me. This is a debate. This is, I go all the way back when it comes to debate. And by the way, for those of you who are just meeting me for the first time, I've got a degree in political science, and I've done a lot of media in the past. One of the greatest things about a debate, everything you need to know goes back to the Nixon-Kennedy debates. Those were the first time that debates in American history were on TV. Kennedy got makeup, made sure that his hair was straight, made sure that he looked great. Nixon avoided all of that. So when he got on camera, he looked super pale. He looked super gaunt. He looked like he had bags because he hadn't slept in 3 weeks because he was the president of the freaking, or he's a senator trying to be the president of the freaking United States. Okay. He had a day job. And what was amazing is that radio was also slightly almost as powerful. They was right when that transition, that tipping point from radio to TV was happening in the United States. You go back and look at this. Go ahead, fact check me. Nixon dominates the debate on the radio waves, crushes Kennedy, absolutely destroys him in that debate. But on the TV, it's the complete opposite, almost to the number. Kennedy destroys Nixon because it's a perception. A debate is a pageant. And unfortunately, this year, that pageant has never had higher stakes than maybe since that debate, quite frankly, because that was also a very large turning point in American history. So I hear you, Mark. And if the majority of people voting were people like you and me, where we could have this conversation and we could parse inflation numbers and we could parse economic growth and we could look at how does that balance against a social issue and grocery, like, man, brother, I am here for you all day. And that's one of those, let's get a drink and talk about it. Sometimes I would enjoy that conversation with you, but we're talking about a debate and you asked me what I would do. And the PR machine inside of me, the dark spellcaster that I can be, that I try to avoid, which is why I work where I work now as opposed to where I used to work, man, none of that matters. What matters are the following. One, I've got to show, at least for that hour, that I am not in decline. Most important thing, he's got to come out strong, aggressive, decisive. And if he does that and he doesn't flub it, inside that sort of margin of he's 80 error, which there is a little consideration for, Trump has that too, by the way, in my opinion, then it's already a win. It's already a win for Biden because it takes away one of the strongest things in Trump's arsenal. Two, he has got to show simply and clearly that social agenda that Americans in middle America and that precious little slice of undecided independents care about so much. That's his strength. Finally, he has got to do what we were talking about. And this does go to the economy. He has got to show economic growth is greater than inflation and make the case of how he thinks he can bring inflation down. You and I both know that that's going to be bending the truth or outright lying, but that's what it is. On the other hand, you already nailed Trump. Trump has got to be, I want to keep more money in your pocket. I want to restore America and make it great again to where we were when I was in office. And then I would add the additional message of just think what this could have been if I didn't have COVID from an economic angle. His social policies to the center are a disaster. He owns the far right, but he's not going to win socially. He's just not. He's already locked that up. The undecideds, he's got to make the case that the economy is worth sacrificing some of that social protection, whereas Biden has got to say, your social protection is so important to you, don't risk losing it, and I promise you I can eventually get inflation down. Like, that to me is where the debate goes.
All right, well, we're going to take a short final break here, folks, but when we come back, I'm going to take a counterpoint to a couple things Tom said there, but one thing he is spot on that I absolutely agree with. This debate is about Joe Biden. It's not about Donald Trump. The pressure on this debate is Joe Biden, and we'll get into that short break, and then we'll be right back.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most private assets, silver and gold.
Call Kirk Elliott, PhD at 877-547-5743. That's 877-KIRK-PhD.
I don't know about you, but I have to have that cup of coffee in the morning. And Kingdom Cup is mold-free, it is pesticide-free, and it is organic. It's got this flavor that is delicious. You don't even have to put cream or sweetener in it.
Why did we go with the bean form, the whole bean? Because ultimately the powder form is the one that gathers the most moisture. And that means the more potential mold development. This is actually organic, mold-free, certified. That's important because ultimately people drink coffee. It's cultural. And so we tried to meet the culture where it is and create a healthy alternative.
Make the healthy choice for you and your family. Try mold-free, pesticide-free, and it's organic. Delicious Kingdom Cup coffee. And it's available now at the Patriot TV store. Go to patriot.tv and click on store. You'll find Kingdom Cup coffee in the health and wellness section. Order Kingdom Cup coffee at the Patriot TV store now.
And we're back. All right, Tom, let me tell you one thing. I absolutely agree with you 100% on that analysis you just did. I think a lot of Democrats are worried about Joe Biden. And they are hoping that they see the Joe Biden that delivered a State of the Union address, which frankly got some decent reviews on it. But they're fearful that we're going to see the Joe Biden of recent who goes off script, lies all the time, talks about things that just never happened. You know, the stories, the fake stories, all that kind of stuff, or even worse, having just a complete meltdown on facts. I somehow don't think that's going to happen, but that's why so many people are going to tune in here. And let me also throw this at you, Tom. You know, if you're voting for Trump or you're voting for Biden, you've made your decision. You're watching this debate for the entertainment section of it, and you're hoping that the other guy screws up. Now that's 90%. You know, at this point, I'm having a hard time figuring out why it's not 100, but it is. It's about 90%. And folks, there's about 10% out there that are not sure which they're leaning one way or the other. It's a sliver of voters that Trump and Biden have to go after. And I hate to discourage this, but it's a small sliver in about 6 states that really matter at this point. I'll give you some news, Tom, and some polling, and I want to see if you agree with me or not. 2 states that I was really shocked about. Minnesota, it's showing Trump either tied or down by 2, or even in Minnesota. Virginia, tied. And the shocker to me of shockers was in New York State, Trump's only down 8 points. Tom, I know I'm jumping ahead, but if he's tied in Virginia, if he's damn near tied in Minnesota, he's only down 8 in New York. Is there a potential that this election could turn into a blowout where people just look at Joe Biden and say, man, this guy is old. I can't vote for him. And I can't stand Trump, but at least he knows what the hell he's talking about economically, and he's a billionaire.
No, I think I would go the other way. I think that it's showing you just how absolutely tight and how much on the margins that this is going to be because, you know, 3 election cycles ago, Minnesota and Virginia were purple. They were considered purple states. It's only been recently as some of the election maps have been redrawn and, you know, as we've gone through the census and things like that, they've started to move in the directions, you know, in that more blue direction that they have. And you keep seeing all these fights in the historic swing states. And now those sort of fringe purplishy ones are getting more and more purple. 8 points is going to be more than enough. Sometimes it doesn't matter how close it gets in a state like New York. New York's going for Biden. I don't really worry about that. But what I do think it does is it also shows how tight this is going to be and the polling that I've seen for the independents gets closer to 12.5 to 14 in terms of those undecided or haven't made their mind up or what they're going to do. And also I'll use myself for this example. I haven't made my mind up, but I detest both of them. And the question is can one of them do enough to make me hold my nose and vote for them? Or am I going to vote third party to make a point. Okay. What's happening? The people that I don't think that we've had enough conversation about those people, because it's really hard to pin them down and where they are and how they're doing this. Those are the undecideds. Like, you're asking what an undecided with. It's like, oh, we've already made up our mind on how we think of these people. It's the action we are going to take based off that thought process. And I genuinely, ladies and gentlemen, right now, this second, I don't know what I'm going to do. I live in Illinois, and I already know where my state is going to go. So that personally makes it a little easier for me to put a protest vote out there. But if I was living in North Carolina, like I have in the past, a deeply, deeply purple state, I genuinely don't know what I would do. And that is where this debate matters so much. That is where this sentencing, like, again, I don't put a lot of stock in polls right now, Mark. We've talked about that a lot. But one that did really jump to my attention was Politico and Ipso did one of people that only identified as independent voters. And they then asked, of those people, I think it was like roughly 3,000 people. So it was a real poll. It wasn't a flash poll. It was one of the first few one I've seen. Is like, how did the verdict shape you? And 21% said that it created a very unfavorable view of Trump. 43% total said that it was unfavorable. Now, that didn't mean that they weren't going to vote for him. It just meant that they influenced their thought. And in an election where the margins are so tight, where you have people like me that know they're going to have to hold their nose, that's the independent we need to start looking at. That's the independent. I'm not trying to say just because it's me. I'm just saying it's like, I live in the center. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm starting to see this anecdotal polling and these stories and everything. Like, this is going to come down to people who are going to decide on the best bad option. And whether we like it or not, debates like what's going to happen coming up shortly are really going to influence in that. And people really are going to tune in to see if they like one of these bad options more than the other, or if they're going to do what I'm probably, if you put a gun to my head, would ultimately do, and that's put a protest vote down. Because again, 70% of us can't stand these guys, ladies and gentlemen. 70% of America, it's a consistency right now. We don't like either of them.
Well, I'm going to close it out with this, Tom. We got 1 minute left. And first of all, I want to thank you for the debate with Dave Brat. That was a lot of fun. And we're going to do that again when Dave has more time, and we'll have the whole hour next time. But let me and again, folks, Tom is a certified independent and I'm a conservative. So we differ a little bit politically, but I love having you on, Tom. It's always entertaining. I want to close the show with this thought. And it goes along the lines of what sort of Tom was talking about. We talk about Biden and Trump. But folks, there are three other candidates, Kennedy, Cornel West, and Jill Stein, that are going to garner votes. Stein and West are polling 1% to 2%, and Kennedy's in that 10 to 12% range. So anytime you hear it's Trump this, Biden this, you have to factor in what happens in a five-way race. Most of the polling that I've seen shows Trump still leading. But again, folks, with the debate coming up this week, the sentencing, the conventions, the vice presidential pick from Trump, we got a lot of things to cover. But one thing I will tell you, Schaftlein Report and Patriot.tv will be here covering all the information for you. So listen, thanks everybody for viewing today. And if you really want to become a Patriot Defender, click that icon up at the top and subscribe to Patriot. You can get you a DVD of General Flynn's movie, and you can become a Patriot Defender to partner up with Patriot.tv. Thanks for viewing. Thanks for listening. We will see you next weekend.